Oh, relying on technology. Okay, looks like it's working, Brent.
Awesome.
Hopefully we have a better connection. My guest on Friday had to just take the show because my internet totally just pooched on me. So get ready, just in case.
Okay, gotcha. Well, I got 3 bars on my side, so I'm good for
Yeah.
now.
I wait till we go live to inform the guests that they might have to carry the show on their own. It's just for fun. Well, this is our stalling portion where we're just waiting for some people to join us. So we'll just have some coffee. Cheers to you. I'm actually
Sure.
having peppermint tea today.
Oh, nice. It's good for the
What's
body.
in your cup? Yeah.
It's actually water.
Oh, that's even better.
I'm a big guy on drinking a lot of water throughout the day, and if I have my first cup of coffee in the morning, then that lasts me pretty much the whole day. So I'm very I drink lots of water. I stay hydrated. I follow a real strict health plan in my life, so I'm pretty key on that.
Oh, I need to be better at the drinking the water. What's the secret?
I think just having access to water all day. Try to stay away from the sugars or pops or too much caffeine, and I just always pack coolers of water around with ice, or water's an SUV, or water in the truck and trailer, and just try to hit a milestone of maybe 3 or 4 bottles a day, and just stay hydrated, especially during the summer months or at this time of the year when it gets hot. So yeah.
Well, as a life as an athlete, you've sort of honed that discipline better than I, not being an athlete of any sort.
Yeah, I think the background of having sports kind of helped out, and having positive maybe influences in your life, whether it's sports or rodeo, hockey or coaching or whatever it may be. It helps you out in life. That's for sure.
Yeah. That's good. All right. Good morning, Kelly, Angie, Karen. The whole gang's showing up, Brent. I promised him no one would be here just as a joke, but yeah.
Awesome. Morning, everyone.
It's happening. Well, welcome to Virtual Coffee Club. We do this Monday to Saturday at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And today we are celebrating, I think that's the right terminology. We're going to learn that today because it is National Indigenous Peoples Day. And I am so excited that Brent Dodginghorse is joining us on Coffee Club. Brent, thank you for hanging out with us today and having a water.
Yeah. Good morning, Jody. I really appreciate the invite. Big shout out to Mike LaBelle for connecting us, and I really appreciate this opportunity just to sit and chat and get to know each other, and go over a few topics that maybe the whole world is thinking about or talking about today.
Well, and we found a good use for Mike LaBelle, so that's like already a win right off the get-go.
Yeah. So Mike's a good man.
He's okay with me saying that. Yeah. So just to give people a little background for you, because I did a little creeping on you. Okay. You are a former professional hockey player, so that's kind of cool. You are I don't know, would I call you a professional cowboy too? You're a steer wrestler, and you actually were the INNFR champ in 2011.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Does that feel like a long time ago, or are you still into it?
Well, that was back in 2011, and I'm definitely still involved in rodeo. My wife barrel races in the PRCA, CPRA. My daughter is heavily involved in barrel racing, but I just team rope, and I provide the girls with well-trained colts and break them, and kind of help them out get down the road right now. But I'm retired from bulldogging. I was actually diagnosed with MS 2 years ago, and it put my athletic career on the hold. But so I don't bulldog anymore. But I had a lot of background in sports and a lot of background in different types of sports, hockey and rodeo and golf, and I just kind of an all-around type of guy when it comes to sports.
Yeah, and now just an excellent stable hand.
Yeah, professional poop shoveler, I guess you can say, or stall boy,
Yeah.
helping my daughter and my wife out.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Brent is also a member of the Chiefing Council at the Tsuut'ina Nation. So we are excited to connect with you today and have some conversation. And I think that, yeah, I probably have 1,001 questions, Brent, but I won't ask them all today. And I'm hoping that we are just starting a starting place for us to learn more about your culture. I think that as human beings, we have to learn and have some, understanding's an interesting word because I'm not sure we'll ever understand, but I think that we need to have compassionate curiosity and, at above all, kindness. And so I'm hoping that we can start some of those conversations and just I'll be the guinea pig to ask questions people think but are afraid to ask out loud. How does that sound?
I'm all for it. Like I said in the beginning, we're open to talk about any subject you want, and I'm here to help out any way I can.
You heard that, friends. He said any subject. I could just switch gears subject. All of a sudden. Yeah. No, I'm kidding. Well, let's start with really basic, I guess. I think that we've heard, how do we properly and respectfully address your culture? Because I think there's a lot of descriptions we've heard over the years, from Indigenous to First Nation to Indian to what, like, how do we do that best?
Well, I really think it's important to, I think you said the key word is have to understand and or learn and building relationships. My wife and I always talk about, let's teach people about the uncomfortable situations that happen, that we encounter, where people are scared to ask questions about our culture, or how do you refer to First Nation people of Indigenous or Indians or Inuit or Métis. Those are frequently asked questions that we get all the time, and these are the uncomfortable questions that we have to learn to communicate and talk to each other. In the southern Alberta area, there's the Treaty 7 of nations of Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, Tsuut'ina Nation, the three nations in Stoney Nakoda, Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Wesley. So, not a lot of people knew that. And there was a time when we were referred to as Indians or natives or tribes, and it's I think there's a big movement and recently with Indigenous people that how they want to be referred to as people of the land or protectors of the land of people, and some people have preferences on how they want to be referred to, and every nation has a different culture perspective, whether it's languages or beliefs and different types of practices. But and one common area is that we all have similar cultures and similar practices, but like I said, Jody, it's really understanding and learning about the cultures. And a big topic was, is it all right to call people Indians, or is it all right would we prefer to call them Indigenous? But I think the more when you really think about it, I think it's just it's how you approach, and maybe you should ask people on how they prefer to be referred to as a Native person. And my preference is Native or First Nation. But I think people can just label and say, I'm going to call you an Indian. That's the way I've known it. That's the way it is. But I think there's so many diverse cultures in Alberta and in Canada. And if you look at all the different diverse cultures in Alberta, you could probably go through the map of the whole world, and there's probably 100 to 150 cultures and languages in Alberta alone. And I really think it's important that we learn about all different cultures and different ethnic races, and understand that at the end of the day, we're all equal. We really are.
Well, I like that you say just ask the person how they would like to be addressed, because I think that's one of the first things that people are like, I probably shouldn't bring it up. But that's almost as weird as saying it incorrectly. Do you agree?
Yeah, I really think it's the right thing to do, because I played hockey for a long time in sports, and for 38 years I've dealt with what I call is racism, and there's been a lot of racism issues that I've dealt with in sports, and I was stereotyped, I was labeled, I was put into a different category from everybody else because I was Indigenous, I was a minority, and there wasn't a whole lot of people like me playing sports or hockey, and I was a stereotype. But if I flip the switch and I want to teach everybody on how we want diversity, inclusion, and equality, that we have to give people tools on how to deal with certain type of scenarios because they don't know how to deal with it. And I think it's really important that if you're uncomfortable in a situation, just ask the question. A lot of times when I see somebody of a diverse background, I just said, "Excuse me, do you mind telling me what your background is? Or I want to learn about it." And a lot of them are just caught off guard, but it's like building that relationship, learning from them, learning their culture, learning their language. Then all of a sudden you're connected with that person and you're showing respect, and it just goes a long way. I've dealt with the opposite side where people just label me, and then it's uh, it's like conflict or the standoffish moment happens, and I just uh, I just believe in that we're all the same, and that everybody's equal, and everybody should be included, and that we just have to change the way we do things.
When I think when someone approaches a conversation with kindness or just respectful curiosity, you can pick that up. You know, like you can tell when somebody is asking a question because they want to build that relationship versus whatever other motivation might be behind it. So, and I think the majority of people, I like to be the positive Pollyanna that we're all really just wanting to learn from each other most respectfully. You can feel that and you know it. And I mean, gosh, think of the things you will learn and what will happen when you just be open, just be comfortable with being vulnerable with someone.
Yeah, we had this conversation a little earlier before the viewers popped on, Jody, and you mentioned the word kindness on your talk show, and it's, to me, it was taught to me when you're teaching people about your culture and your ethnic background or your race or your religion or who you are, is that you have to be kind to people, because when you come across angry or mad or disgruntled, people don't tend to listen. And it was told to me from my grandmother, who lived to be 100 years old, and the elders that lived in our community, when you build relationships, you have to have that kind heart, and then you have to have certain qualities that are in you that you have to show, like not sitsite, which is strength in our culture. That you have to have that strength because it's in your DNA. It's who you are as a Native person or Indigenous, and it doesn't matter what culture you are, you have that background and you have that in you. So it's important to be kind to everyone, and just to show that compassion when you're dealing, and especially at this time when you're dealing with we're coming towards opening up during a pandemic, but there is a lot of diversity and a lot of social media and a lot of issues going on during a pandemic that I think kindness wins over in the end, and strength, not sitsida, the strength that you have within you can mold people together and help people through tough times, because this whole nation is this whole world is healing right now, and it's important that we work together.
I love that. Well, and I think it's also probably safe to say, with conversations just starting to happen. So even if we can be some of the ripple effect that starts from coffee club. So I always love to think, people that are connected into this community are going to be the ones that we start the ripple effect with. So some of those first conversations where we are finding the courage to ask someone how they want to be referred to as, like, we're not always going to get, I think there's the possibility, Brent, that the response back might be a little bit negative, but I think we have to understand that maybe the 5 people before us that spoke to that person didn't have that same kind of respect. So there might be, I guess, just natural negative response until we can start to break down some walls. Would that be fair?
Yeah, it's totally understandable, because I deal with a lot of diverse communities and cultures, and there's common talk amongst our talks of how the approach is, or what type of approach should you have. And I think it's common that people can act it in a different approach, where if it's, like I said, if it's brought upon in a negative way, or if you're just stereotyping a different culture, whether you're Asian or black, and you're making comments, just those little tiny comments that may be depicted towards a certain culture can change the effect of your conversation. So I think it's very important that we install the proper words in people's conversations on cultures, and just having the respect for each other. And it goes a long ways if you sincerely mean it, and you're asking people for their opinions, and then using that proper terminology when you deal with diverse people or Indigenous communities, or not all Indigenous communities are the same. There's different First Nations across southern Alberta we're Native, yes, we're Indigenous, but we're from different nations. And it's, like I said, it's understanding and learning about different cultures, and learning about different people. And everybody has a personality, and everybody has an identity. It doesn't matter what culture you are. It's that identity that that separates it. And a lot of times people will just you know um, it's hard to say, but yeah, they'll judge you for your skin color. They're going to judge you for who you are. But Jody, I met this wonderful human being. His name was Hoover Hayes. The rodeo community might know him, and I just absolutely adored this man, because he saw color in nobody. He saw people for who they are, and he saw people for their personality, and he remembered people by their personality and who they are. He shook hands with every single person. It didn't matter who you are, and he remembered your name. But I think that's the way the world should be lived, by the people's identity and who they are, and not by their judging people by their skin color. And I just treasured my time traveling with that Hoover Hayes. He was an amazing man.
That is for sure. So when it comes to the recent stories in the news bringing light to residential schools and the horrific tragedy of finding that grave with those 200 plus children. How do we support the healing process for your community? And I think the shock and trauma that it causes your community as well as ours, because I think a lot of people some people know, some people kind of knew, some people had no idea that this was happening in our world.
Yeah, well, I definitely know one thing is, I just encourage your listeners and everybody to learn and understand what happened to our people, and to learn about it is very important, because we need to learn the impacts of what happened in Kamloops, and it's very sad, and it's very horrific, and it's very, all the details that happen there could be overwhelming for a lot of people. And I understand where our people are coming from, where it sets off triggers in all of our communities, because we're all affected by it. And what happened many years ago is what our elders told us that happened. And when we have to hear these types of conversations, it triggers a lot of people. And whether it's negative emotions, or some people are trying to be positive about it, and emotions are all over the place. And so I just think it's really important that we learn about it. And me and my wife always talked about it's important for mainstream society in all Canada to understand what happened to our people, and how resilient and how strong we are. We've had to endure all these struggles and pains, and the intergenerational trauma that went with boarding schools that were passed down. And my wife's a school teacher, and she teaches her kids. She has to teach them about it because they need to learn about it, but she also teaches them about the strength and the resiliency that the First Nation people went through to overcome what happened. And it was very tough, because you think about it, not many children that were found, and the untold stories that the government and people didn't want to get out, but now the word's out there. And the reality is there's over 167 residential schools in Canada, and I believe there's over 570 residential school bodies that are found right to this day. And now there's a big movement in First Nation country to look for more bodies, because they know there's more bodies out there. And it's very important that everybody learns about it, because it is very traumatic. And not only as First Nations people, but as Canada, we're healing, and it's important that we heal together, learn about what happened in our past, and we must teach people about it, because not a lot of people knew about it. And it is tough to talk about. And in our community, we had a day school, and it triggered a lot of elders, it triggered a lot of people. There was a lot of emotions up and down, and it's been all over the place. But it's our leadership and our chief and our council have talked about this, and it's important that we work together, and it's important that we identify the bodies on our First Nations and go through that healing process. And what I've seen is people come together, and what I've seen is people building the relationships to teach people about what happened. And it's so important, Jody, that we all work together and understand and learn.
So how do we support in that? Is that by learning? Is that by having more conversation? Is there something else we could do to show that support, to show your communities that we care as much as you do?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that I've watched Canada and different communities support it by wearing orange and supporting uh, indigenous vendors or indigenous people in this movement and educating people about it. And there's a lot of content creators on TikTok that are teaching people about it, which is wonderful and awesome. And there's a lot of First Nation Indigenous 101 workshops that you can take courses or online courses. Shout out to Holly Patra, not Holly Patra, but Holly Fortier. But Holly Fortier is teaching people about Indigenous residential schools, and my wife Sonja Dodginghorse is teaching people about residential schools. So there's a lot of people out there that are teaching, and you could take their courses, but you could also just support the movement and um, make people aware of what the situations are. And but also, not only that is just talking about it, and it's important that we have important relationships and talk about it and have open conversations, and maybe the uncomfortable conversations that we teach people about and our teach our kids on what happened out there and just how to be respectful. And I think reconciliation is so important to build the relationships, but show people that we can, our different cultures can get along and work together. That's, to me, that's true reconciliation.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like lots of times there's a lot of talk about it, but there's not a lot of action behind it. And so I think through Black Lives movements, we had a few conversations around, it's one thing to be ignorant of a situation. Then once you acknowledge your ignorance, the next step is doing something about it. And that means learning, and that means putting ignorance into action and moving forward with kindness. So I think it's hard because we don't understand. And so I just wanted to be like, okay, let's address that and mourn with you and find ways to connect moving forward. Do you feel and this might be an opinion-based question, so if you don't want to answer, I understand, but do you feel like movements like the community of St. Albert in Alberta are canceling their Canada Day celebrations to support your community? Is that a good, bad, right, wrong step in the right direction?
Everybody has the right to their own opinions on how they want to move forward on whether it's canceling this event or trying to cancel a Canada Day event to support the Indigenous, and whether it's right or wrong, that's up to them. But I it's, I really feel that it's everybody's individual right on how they want to move forward with it. But I think it's important to pay homage to what happened to the Indigenous people hundreds of years ago, because that was a reality that was never taught to through the government or through the education system. And it's this has been long said from our elders that this is what used to happen to us, and this is how they did it. But the reality is, until all these findings start happening, and now the truth is coming out, and the people that want to cancel culture and this and to be militant about it, I don't, to me, I really don't agree with it, because during a pandemic and during a time when people need to be total inclusive and show equality and show respect, is that we need to work together to and part of this, what you're doing, I think is amazing, Jody, because you're into the media side and you're into the educating part. It's important that we teach people that cultures have to work together and have to get along. And it's so important for the media, the government, the teachers, the economic business ventures, that First Nation people are included, but not only First Nation people, but all different diversities are included and moving forward, because Canada is a good place. I've grown up here my whole life, but it's they're in a time of where everybody's divided. I think it's just so important that we work together.
And I appreciate you sharing your opinion. My opinion of it too is that I would, instead of it being canceled in ultimately what becomes protest, is I would love to have seen communities just increase what that looks like. So it's a Canada Day celebration. What does Canada look like? Well, it's these diverse groups of people who make up a nation of humans. So let's celebrate all of them together. And I really feel like the canceling confuses the people who already don't understand to stay more on the other side and not come across the bridge. It gave this opportunity for people to fight about whether they agree with it instead of understanding the reasoning behind it.
Yeah, it's sometimes social media and sometimes issues can be magnified by 100 times, and sometimes we kind of forget about what the real meaning of at this time of the year in Canada. But not only that, but the way I see it is for the past 15 months, not only our nation but the whole world has gone through a really tough time. And I think this is the time when everybody needs to rally behind each other and support each other, because there's so many mental issues and social issues and suicides and overdoses, and not only that, but going through the pandemic where people lost their lives and their loved ones. So this is a time of healing now where we need to come together.
Yeah. Well, and I think the biggest eye opener for me so far, Brent, has been the fact that there were residential schools that were still functioning until 1996. So earlier you said like this happened hundreds of years ago. Well, it happened in our lifetime right now. And that to me was, and I was like, man, we've got to talk about this because that's crazy. It's crazy
Yeah,
regardless of the time frame. Please don't get me wrong, but I couldn't believe that.
yeah, it's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it, but the reality is that some of my family and my in-laws that I'm married into a Saskatchewan family, the Cree family, Tipatat family, and their families, they were part of the residential schools in Saskatchewan up until 96, and it was it wasn't talked about. It was never um, something that we talked about that they didn't really want to talk about until they were ready to talk about. But now that it's out there on TikToks and mainstream social media and people are learning about it, that's the reality that's been in Canada and for a long time.
Yeah. Well, Rhonda shares a comment with you, Brent, that I just wanted to read if it'll come up on the screen for you. And she says, these conversations are so important to have, and I appreciate the opportunity to understand further. Thank you for sharing your heart, Brent.
Thank you, Rhonda. I just appreciate everybody taking their time to listen to, and have a cup of water. I'm not drinking coffee. I already had my 2 cups, but it's I think it's really important that we just learn about each other's cultures. We learn about each other's identity, and we also just build that bridge, that connection, teach people and teach our kids that we can all get along and that we're all equal, and that we're we are going to make this through the pandemic and make it through some tough times, and we are going to heal together.
Well, I remember a quote. I never quote it properly, so forgive my bad quoting here. But the basis of the quote was that change is hard at the beginning, messy in the middle, and beautiful at the end. So I think we're stepping into the messy, and that's okay, because we're going to get through that. And just, I don't know about you, Brent, but I'm the type of person that likes, I'm a very positive outlook person. And so I just think once we get through this messy, like, think of how incredible our world is going to be if we step onto the other side with kindness and understanding. It's going to be magnificent.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I have so much faith in our younger generation. Uh, these young kids, and they're so smart and they're so kind, and you know, um, I believe that racism is a learned behavior. And I believe that we are all meant to be, um, kind to each other. And like I told you in the beginning, Jody, that we have an opportunity to teach everybody and teach our kids and show our kids there's that positive outlook and those positive things that we can make a change. And it's important that everybody not only talks the talk, but they walk the walk. And it's important that we do it every day, because our kids are watching, and their friends are watching,
Yes.
and their other kids are watching. So we must set that example for everybody, as parents, or just as human beings. Just be good people.
Your wife has a podcast, I understand, where if people wanted to learn more, we're going to have her come on and be a guest with us when she has a chance. But can we give her podcast a shout out and people could check it out?
Yeah, if it's called Go Buckle Dreams, and her name is Sonja Dodginghorse, and she actually trained my niece and my daughter on how to create the podcast, how to host it, and they're 15 years old and 9 years old, and Indigenous young youth host it, and they talk
Yeah.
about different issues from goal setting, barrel racing, Indigenous 101, teaching people about communities, teaching people about different aspects of our culture, and really focusing on resiliency and strength, not sitside, that our strength, we all have it in us. So that's her podcast, is Go Buckle Dreams. So check it out online, and she she tries to have it as much as she can, and hopefully you can have her on as a guest, because she's a lot better than me.
Yeah. Well, and I think we should get the girls on too. I think that would also be an interesting combo.
Yeah,
I
it'd be
can get
pretty cool.
schooled. I can get schooled not only in the culture but the life of 15-year-old girls, which I easily have forgotten since it was so long ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be conscious of our time because I know we've gone a little bit longer than our regular 20-minute coffee break. But Brent, we talk for hours because I still have billions of questions. So we'll have you back, because I think that it would be great for us to have conversation around like what a treaty is and what a land acknowledgement means, and lots of different things. So I hope that you and or Sonja will be back to help us have more conversation around it.
Yeah, just one thing on the land acknowledgement. It's so important. NHL hockey teams are starting to acknowledge the treaty lands, or the lands that they're on. Vancouver Canucks, big shout out to the Aquilina family, that they're acknowledging it. Edmonton is doing it. Winnipeg is doing it. And, hopefully that Calgary does it, to where they acknowledge that they're on the lands of Treaty 7 and different Indigenous communities. So it's coming. It's getting there. We just got to work together. So thanks, Jody. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow morning. We're going to have an interesting Tuesday because it's TikTok Tuesday. And Travis Yeehaw is going to be joining us. Now, he is an incredible TikTok influencer who turns rap songs into country songs. So I feel like this is going to be quite interesting, Brent. You're going to have to tune in.
I saw him on TikTok. He's pretty cool. He's millions and millions of hits. The guy's talented.
Yeah, I know. It's wild. So we get to meet Travis tomorrow. But Brent, thank you again for just sharing, for allowing us to start some uncomfortable conversations to move forward. And I appreciate your heart and your kindness so very much.
Yeah, you take care, Jody. Yeah, have a good day, and thanks to all the listeners. You guys have a good day.